I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Anatomy of a Movie.
One more time.
About time. One more time. I am your host, Marisa Serafini, and joining me, I have my lovely co-host.
Hi, I'm Roxy Striar.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited that Roxy's joining us here.
Woo, me too.
I'm Sara Stretton, and I'm going to pass it off.
Demetri Panos. Wow. Like, I'm just surrounded. There's never been so much estrogen on this panel before like this. But this is
Lucky
awesome.
you.
Don't
I was
forget
just going to
about-
say, well, there's Phil in the
We have
booth.
Phil
There we
in
go.
the
But
booth.
right out here, this is like awesome.
Say hello, Phil.
And we're about to go
Hello, everybody.
skipping through a park or something.
I hope
Music.
so.
So, our overall thoughts of this movie. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Personally, I liked it for a romantic comedy movie. I think it's one of the better ones for a romantic comedy that came out this year in 2013. What did you guys think?
I thought it was very feel good. I really enjoyed it, and I walked out of the theater happy that I had went.
I'll say that for the first 5 minutes after the movie, I was like, oh, happy, feel good. And then now I have some questions. Now I'm kind of questioning it, but definitely immediate reaction was I was happy. But I want to hear your guys' opinions.
I was a fan. I'm a fan of this movie. I like Richard Curtis when he does romantic comedies, and he's been sort of kind of labeled as a romantic comedy guy. Love Actually, Notting Hill, For Weddings and a Funeral, some of the things that he's written, directed. Yeah, this movie, through and through, I just thought that it worked. For me, it's an endearing romantic comedy. It's a romance movie. It's a good relationship movie that has that throws in a dash of science fiction in it, which I love science fiction. And the balance of the science fiction aspect and the romance aspect was like perfect. And when it came to the end of the movie, I had a nice warm fuzzy feeling, and I walked out, and the movie stayed with me. Thought about some of the themes of the movie, and I really enjoyed this as a if you want to call it a romantic comedy. I guess it had some laughs. So I hate saying like dramedy or anything like that, but I think it works as it's a good, charming romantic comedy. I really enjoyed this movie a lot.
Absolutely. Phil, what did you think of this movie?
I actually enjoyed it a lot. I got to see it with Roxy.
Woo!
I think we were the only two people not to cry at the ending, not because we're soulless, but
Did anyone else on this panel cry? Did we get any tears?
I didn't cry, but it stuck with me.
Every single
I
person.
I felt for it.
Every person in the theater was crying, and actually we went to a matinee, and there were a lot of people in the theater, and they all were crying. I went in the women's bathroom afterwards, and they ran out of toilet paper because people were like rubbing their faces and blowing their noses.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was really intense.
Wow.
For me, it was emotional. I didn't cry, but it's an emotional movie, and I found that listen, a romantic comedy has to hit certain points, and it has to earn them. First and foremost, I hate romantic comedies that force the issue. It's almost like there's a guy off in the theater who's holding up cue cards going, this is the part of the movie where you have to cry. Or
There
this
was
is the
a
part
guy
of
in
the
this movie
movie
holding up cue cards.
You're
telling
just
you.
cynical right now. That's just mean. And this movie earned all of its emotions. It earns its laugh. It earns its emotional feelings and outpouring. And so by the end, I was emotional. But it was a good kind of an emotional because thankfully it didn't end on like major tragedy or anything like that. It wasn't a disease romantic movie. This was a good old fashioned, like good romantic comedy that really earns, but it earned every single feeling for me anyways. There was no cheating.
I
Didn't feel forced.
I like the originality to this movie that we added the time travel within a love story. But it's still comedic. It was used in a comedic way, and I liked how this movie was conceptualized in that, because I know Richard Curtis, who wrote and directed this film, he wanted to write a story about family and the family aspects, because his previous films, like Love Actually, Notting Hill, they were all, most of his more famous films, they're known for friendships and the bond between just being friends. He wanted to write a story about a family this time.
You said that it wasn't a disease film and that it didn't end on a bad note, and I partially agree with you, but I think for me what made this film is that there was that extra level that wasn't just about the romance. It was about the family, like you're talking about, when we do see that the father is sick and he does pass away, and it does end on a good note, but it's bittersweet, you know, when you to have a third child and not be able to speak to your father anymore. I didn't think that it was one of those movies that was all happy all the time and just about this couple. There was a deeper level to it.
Oh, I agree. But by disease movie, I'm talking like, you know, Julie Roberts has been in a couple like where one of the main characters is stricken with a disease and
Dying young.
Dying young,
Yep.
you know, and I'm talking about like Bill Nighy's dad character wasn't the focal, you know, he wasn't part of the relationship. So, you know, the peripheral, the supporting cast is fine. What I mean by disease, sometimes like the disease is used so common, it's such a cliche that somebody has to, you know, have some semblance of a disease and you shouldn't fall in love with me, and they fall in love anyways, and you know what's going to happen at the end, and they force the emotion on you. And About Time didn't. To your point, it was very bittersweet.
Right.
But it wasn't about Bill Nighy's, it wasn't about Dad's cancer. It wasn't about him getting sick. It was about the couple and them growing up, and it was about the boy too. It was about him and the decisions that he makes or gets to remake and how that affects his life.
And it's very interesting because what carried the movie through for me, or what my favorite parts were actually the family, was specifically his dad and mom. I think that from the first point when they introduce his mom as like her fashion idol being the queen, like from there she had me. She was my focal point every time she came on the screen. So like I'm very happy that he went that route to create that relationship.
But isn't it, you know, when you just said the key word too, like this isn't just a relationship between two people. Family is about relationship. Mm-hmm. And this is, in a sense, this is a great relationship movie about finding one's own and helping family, you know. And I love the family too. There's such a great part of this movie, but it's friends and family as well. And you know, I think that Richard Curtis just was able to put everything together, and you know, it could be sort of a hard movie to talk about, or not to talk about, I mean, but to market, because it is such a big relationship movie. But you have to focus on the romance of this.
And it's not just about the romance; it's about the story and the meaning of enjoying every day, like literally carpe diem, enjoying your moment and living in it, even though at face value it may not be the greatest or the happiest moment, but you have to realize it and accept it and enjoy life and look at it in a more positive way, even though it looks negative at face value.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that too, because Richard Curtis himself, like when he was talking about how he was coming up with this, and it just came from it partially came from a conversation he was having with a friend of his, and she pretty much blatantly asked him, like, are you happy? And he said, no, not really. Mm-hmm. And their conversation went on from there, and they were having this discussion about what constitutes happy life. And, you know, one of the things he said, he goes, this conversation right now is a happy life, or flying to Monte Carlo and having a date with Grace Kelly would be a happy life. And so once those juices started to get flowing, you know, he started concocting, how can I do this and make and talk about this. And I think that's the charm of this movie, because in the end, it is about, are you happy with life? And if you were able to change something to make you happy in life, you know, could you do it?
And another message was, how do you, Richard Curtis had mentioned, how do you treasure a regular and average day?
Right.
And that goes when we see that at the end of the movie, when we see Tim repeating the day over and he's looking at all the little things that he didn't think about.
Sure.
I think it's amazing that, as you were talking about how it was conceptualized, he really did get his point across. What he wanted to accomplish was accomplished. So whether this was the most original or your favorite movie, at least the director and the writer got to say exactly what he wanted to say.
Which they were one and the same.
Right, and that's what came across. Yeah, the director and the writer, as in one person, Richard Curtis. But anyway, go ahead.
On a script level, well, for me, it's interesting to note how kind of it is different, from American romantic comedies. Think of like 500 Days of Summer and how that kind of shifted time. Adjustment Bureau kind of comes into mind, and obviously you have so many. They did an article on the 50 greatest time travel movies, which Back to the Future won. But I'm saying this because it's the script is different in the sense of there's not. I thought initially they could have so much melodrama in terms of how they could just mess with Tim's life and how bad it could go, and and how unexpected tragedy can hit at any moment. But they didn't go that way, which I thought worked to the film's credit, because it would have been like, oh well, it's just another bad thing that he has to deal with, and he's going to try to fix it through time, and time's not going to work to his advantage, and all these different things. So from that level, I thought it worked really well.
I agree.
I will say, like, if we're going to get into, like, the script and the writing and specific choices, I'm sure, like, I think that this was a romantic comedy. They filled it with some really good liners. I know Roxy has a few down that I'm sure she'll end up quoting. I'm a quotes person.
Yes,
she's going to end up quoting. But scene-wise, writing-wise, I liked that they differentiated his experience with tragedy and with how it was affected by time. Obviously, you have his sister get in an accident and his father have these. Those are both very big things that people want to be able to change, and that he had a different reaction and a different role in each, and how he was able to let certain things happen. I really appreciated that.
Sure.
I appreciated some of the choices they made, and I appreciated, for instance, there's one scene probably in the middle of the movie with what is her name? Charlotte. Yes, where they put the obvious scenario. He has the choice to sleep with her with full awareness that he could obviously go back in time and change that never even happened. And that they didn't give that almost cop-out, that they avoided like things like that. I really admired, and I felt that was very human, and that really was endearing for him as a character, because we got to see that it was really a true love, because if you truly love someone, you wouldn't have done that.
I think that's a really good point, and it's actually something that I was going to bring up, because even if you can go back and change something, it doesn't mean you didn't do it, and you didn't get the satisfaction from it, or you didn't get to learn from it. And so I think that had he slept with her and then gone back, this is also talking about Phil's point, where they didn't have him do all of these bad things, and then, there was this issue the entire time, and then he just fixed it. Had he slept with her and then gone back, yes, there would have been no consequences.
Sure.
But he still did it. He still cheated on his girlfriend, soon to be fiance, soon to be wife, if he had done that. So
there might have been consequences had he slept with Charlotte and she got pregnant.
Sure.
His outcome might have been different.
That's true, definitely. But I was just very appreciative of the fact that the things that he went back in time for, and eventually we know he stops going back in time for this reason, but the things he did go back in time for were very minor. To some extent, like with meeting her again, and the thing with the sunscreen, like things that you're like, oh crap, why'd I do that? I wish I could redo it. Not things like, oh, I want to do this and get away with it and be kind of malicious about it. So I was happy about that.
I wanted to talk, like, Phil, you made up a great point regarding screenwriting, time travel. Look, if I were a professor and doing a screenwriting thing and class, and we were talking about time travel, first and foremost, my movie would be Back to the Future. I think Back to the Future is as near perfect as a time travel script and story and movie that you will ever find. And I would say even that trilogy utilizes time travel and it explains it. Explanation is key in a time travel movie. You have to set up your rules and boundaries. And this movie does it right at the beginning, pretty much right off the top. And it makes you, and it sets up the rules. And to your point, it's not like complicated. Dad tells son, you can't go back in time and say, kill Hitler or anything like that. The only thing you can do is go back to where you were once and change something, but it's not going to be a butterfly effect kind of thing where the outcome of the world is in the fate of your hands if you do this time travel. So it sets these things up right at the beginning, and any good time travel story should try to convey to the audience what you can and can't do. Like, I don't have to be a quantum physics guy to understand this movie. It's pretty much laid out right in front of you.
I liked how they put limitations on the time travel. There was boundaries that he couldn't cross, and certain times that he couldn't even go back to. You know, like once his child was born, you can't go back past that time because you'll change it.
Right, and time travel movies too. If when you watch them, there's sometimes the device is used as how do I want to call it? As a conflict. Like, you have to get back to the, in Back to the Future, one of the big things is all these things are changing and you disappear. Like, you have to get back in time or back to the future, so to right these wrongs. And sometimes there's a time limit. And in this movie, it didn't really have it. The only conflict, if you even want to call it a conflict, I just call it a nice plot device, was, yes, you can't go back. There was a pregnancy. His wife was pregnant, and when his father was sick, he was prolonging his dad's death, but they knew that they had a set time because once that baby was born, he was going to have to let go. And I thought that was a nice plot point that worked.
Marissa,
no,
I was just going to say, it's interesting, though, because while I do think this movie really got across a different perspective on time travel and like a new option that is restricted and in a way more contained, more simple. It's like a simpler life. It's not like this big, huge, taking on the world time travel movie. And it got across themes about family and about how you live your life day to day and how to be happy. I think that one thing that they had to kind of change in order to get those things across was that we didn't get as much of a character arc in our main characters. He kind of was a very moral, good person. Like, I fell in love with, I really liked Tim within the first 5 minutes of the movie. He was already a good guy. He already had a good sense of humor. He was sweet. So giving him this, I kind of knew he wasn't going to have that like fall or that trouble with it. He had trouble. His biggest problem was like, oh yeah, wait, I haven't met you and now I'm awkward. It wasn't anything tragic or mean or bad. So we did lose a little bit of, in my opinion, like character arcs, but it was sacrificed for theme. So sometimes that's all I would say, is that we did get things across, but I think that
I want to go back to the time travel for a second, and then I'll address a couple points you made, but I actually had a little bit of an issue with the time travel in this movie. Not as much as some people seem to. Obviously, we're on the blogs, we're reading what other people's opinions are.
You're talking about the Times article about the woes of time travel in this movie, because there is Times just killed this movie. Unfortunately,
all the sci-fi.
Yeah, they did. But if you read that
rip this
article,
movie apart.
no, but again, before we even get into that. That's not what this movie is about. Like, I read that.
I don't even want
Exactly.
to acknowledge it, to be fair.
We have to suspend our disbelief, but yes, Roxy.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, I didn't go to this movie to see a science fiction film about time travel. If I wanted to learn about the legitimacy of time travel and how it would actually work if it was possible,
go see Donnie Darko.
Then I would not go see this film.
That's true. True.
But what I did have a problem with was one of the rules that was laid out at the beginning was only the men in our family can do this.
Right.
And he brought back his sister. And that, to me, was a loophole that kind of bothered me. Considering that the dad had never brought back the mom and specifically said that the mom never knew about it. And yes, bringing back the sister had consequences, and then he ended up having to unbring her back and fix all of that. I didn't know as part of the rules, and he was very sure of it. I was surprised that he was so sure that he could just bring somebody along. That bothered me. I don't know if that bothered any of you guys.
No, I mean, it was something that was brought up, but here's my thing. You want to call it a loophole. It wasn't the sister that commensurated that did the action. He just said, hold on to me. So he's the vehicle for doing it. So to me anyways, the way that played out was she was just she was the vehicle. She was hopping in the DeLorean, and he's the DeLorean, and taking her back to, he goes, look, this is what I can do. He goes, I can do it. She can't do it. Hold on to me. And they made a specific point to say, hold on to me, or they held hands. And so he was able to take her back in time. Dad's didn't say only, he said only the men can do it. And if you're staying script wise, only the men can do it, but they can't. But it doesn't say, there was nothing that said they couldn't take somebody with them if they had the power. I mean, it didn't bother me at all. I ran with it.
I had more of a problem actually with the scene where he goes back with his father to the beach as a child.
That was like
Because
Inception, kind of like going
because
back
in my mind,
even further.
Yeah, he went further past the point when he knew he had the gift, and then he went back to a point as a child where he would obviously have the thoughts, because he could remember everything that happened to him, so he would always have known from the time he was like. But
again,
it was worth it for the moment because it was such a beautiful scene between father and son that I was like, well, it doesn't quite make sense, but we're just gonna pretend and have fun in the waves and not try and think about that.
But again,
I didn't mind that, because we know from the beginning of the movie that men have it, and it made me to believe that they've had it their whole lives, but they just found out about it at a certain moment in their lives. It doesn't show
you have
that
to be 21 in order to be able to use it.
But again, focus on who precipitated that time travel.
the father.
It was the father. So it wasn't Tim. Tim, is that his name?
Yeah.
Tim.
It wasn't Tim who did it. It was the father who went back to that time.
Oh, no. That was when they were both standing in the room, completely separate, both with their hands clenched. They weren't touching.
Right, but it was the father who precipitated. It was where the father wanted to go. It wasn't where the son wanted to go. It was, you have to remember who's precipitating, who is the cause of the time travel.
Oh, it's not a problem with him actually getting there. It's a problem with once he got there, he would realize what his future held. And then from the time he was 9 to 21, he would know that he was a time traveler.
True, but they went back to present day because we know that the father passes away.
Yeah.
This is one of those conundrums in time travel. like in that Time magazine article, that woman, I think it was a woman, the author of the article, man, I mean, she must have gotten a headache watching this movie.
Right.
And to me, if you're gonna, again, with a romantic comedy that's using a simple form of time travel, which can, you can blow your mind. I think, again, he just set up the rules. They were very simple. There was no machinery involved. All you needed was a dark place and clench your fists.
Very simple effects.
There you go.
Very budget friendly.
And it took technology out of the equation. Just told you where you can and where you're not going to go, and how you can affect certain major things. And they set it up. So, when you're talking about the men in the group, like, you can criticize a Back to the Future if you can find those things, or any kind of, or Terminator kind of a movie. This movie, to nitpick the way he or she nitpicked that movie, I was like, how do you enjoy a movie like this? I mean, because basically it is ultimately time travel is just a device. It is not the plot.
Here was the point of the time travel. This is what I got out of all the rules that he laid out. And then Tim is like, oh, so I'll go back for money. And he's like, no. So this is the quote to me that stood out from the dad. He says, you have to use it for things that will really make your life the way that you want it to be. Right. That was what this vehicle was. So yes, I can find faults, and I'm like, does that really make sense? But overall, I don't really care. This wasn't, although time travel was part of this movie, and the movie was called About Time as a little play on words, this movie was not about time travel. That was not the point of the movie. No. It was just a nice added touch to a romantic comedy to help us get to the point that we needed to end up at.
Right. It was, like, as I said, it was a device. It was just a device used that was explained simply for an audience who's going to go to a romantic comedy to get. And yes, we could nitpick, and we could probably spend 2 hours nitpicking on, causalities and butterfly effects and ripple effects. But that's not what About Time is about.
I liked how Tim used this, like the progression of how he used the this time travel device.
Sure.
At the beginning, when he first found out, it was for the little things, like kissing a girl and changing outcomes for like little fun, selfish reasons. But then throughout the movie, it was for more bigger personal things, changing a bigger outcome and helping others using this, and helping his sister, helping his friend. With the whole play, and so throughout the movie, we saw a progression of his character wanting to help others.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I was going to bring up regarding character arc. I thought that Tim had a very nice character arc, because where he was awkward and geeky, he used it to say, what if I take more pride in myself? What if I go into a situation a little braver and I do kiss the girl other than like shy away? Or the sister's Kit Kat's best friend who spends the summer, and what if I go back, and if I am that a stronger male and I'm not so geeky? I think he learns these things, and that enhances his relationship with Rachel McAdams. And I think by the end he does learn. I think he learns that time travel, I can use it, it's really neat, but I don't necessarily need it. And where he was using it before, so he became he became a man. He became a family man. He has children, he's got a family, he's still, and he has the love and of his immediate family. And yeah, so I think there was a bit of a character arc for that character, for Tim's character, I believe. And so
I think he grew a little bit every single time he decided to make another decision. Usually we don't get to go back and do something differently, but I think it's very admirable that if you do something and you don't like the way you do it, to go back and do it better. Obviously we don't all have that option, but I do think that every time that he went back, he grew and his decisions were stronger. So I do think there were many character arches, but I get what you're saying, because if you look at him in the beginning of the script, he loved his sister, he wanted to find a girlfriend, he loved his parents, and there wasn't any big issue. By the end of the script, he loved his sister, he loved his parents, and he had a girlfriend. So it wasn't like he had to get somewhere, really. Although at this point he went from being part of a family to having a family of his own. So, and like you're saying, there is growth. But no, I don't think that he started as one man and ended up as another.
Well, he was
go ahead. I was just going to say, what do we think about Mr. Gleeson's portrayal of this character in general? Not the actual, I'm not talking about the writing of the character, I'm not talking about the lines, I'm talking about the actor's portrayal of who this person was. Do you guys have any strong feelings?
Domhnall Gleeson.
Yes.
I'm
exactly
calling him
Mr. Gleeson.
We could call him Dom for short.
I liked how he literally, him and Bill kind of resembled each other, not obviously in a physical sense, but also character-wise, right? I thought it was very cyclical, the whole, going back to the whole motif of, you remind me of my mother, Mary. And so it's just a continuation of the same family in some sense.
I think
and she's the one who loves books instead of the dad who loves books. You get the tie-in in the next generation. Who knows?
I think it was interesting because they had a very hard time casting him, because when he came in for the audition, he actually had a massive beard on his face and was in the middle of filming Anna Karenina, and he just didn't look the part. So Richard was like, I auditioned him once and he was really talented, but I was just like, I can't get past this. I auditioned him again and he still had it. And I was like, I don't know. So I think that it's funny because when you think about the story, he's definitely not the person that first comes to mind as the lead in a romantic comedy.
Well, interestingly, there was an Entertainment Weekly article where he did admit, had Richard cast someone else, the movie probably would have made more money.
Yeah, he's like, he could have cast a star and it would have made more money, which is, I think the actor... I think he did a great job. Again, to me, first and foremost, in a romantic comedy, you have to like the characters. For me, anyways, you have to buy into them, and his character, the way that he played it, he had a bit of that awkwardness, but he played it off. He could deliver a comedic line. He was funny. Sometimes his awkwardness was funny. Asking out a girl the way he went in for the kill and then turned away, and all that stuff. To me, I think that he was great, but it made me like the character more. Whatever quirks as an actor that he put into that character, whether they're his or whether he was acting, I thought that they made me like that character more. I think one other important thing too about this movie: most romantic comedies, in one way, shape, or form, they follow this straight formula pretty much, where couple meets, okay, and they're not necessarily couple, people that would get together. Opposites attract. They meet, they fall in love, and then somewhere in the middle, there's a major conflict. There's a major fight. And they break up, and then the rest of the movie is about them getting back together. This movie, I like this movie because this wasn't about a couple that had that conflict. They loved each other. And, whatever arguments there were arguments because of real life, not because somebody was spending time with a receptionist too late at night, or there wasn't anything like that. And I like that they weren't a conflicted couple. And so that made me like this movie more.
And I liked how Tim, because we see when he first meets
Mary.
Yes,
Mary.
Thank you, Mary. That, they're doing the dark dining, the dating scene, and then he goes back and erases all that and helps his friend out with the play.
Right.
And we see later on that he helps his sister in the same way, kind of. But the fact that he didn't go back again to rewrite, just to meet up with Mary again and do the whole dating scene again, just added another element, because they added another scene that he still really wants the girl. Had he gone back, he would have still gotten her. But they added the scene when he's at the Kate Moss Museum.
Solution.
Right.
He
Yes.
found a solution.
And it just goes to show how determined he was to be with Mary.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the actor did a great job, because had it been somebody else that I think was a complete ladies' man, stud, leading, whatever you want to call it, then it wouldn't have been as realistic to me that he was just I want to find love, and he was so willing to do whatever it took to be with this girl, because he felt like he needed her, he wanted her, whatever it was. And I think he really did a great job. He was funny, his timing was great, he was endearing. I liked them as a couple. There was chemistry there.
And come on, you like the accent too.
Yeah, of course.
I love it.
Right.
There you go.
Absolutely. I thought he was adorable. I really did.
Yeah.
I thought overall, in terms of cast, they had some heavy hitters in the sense that you kind of know these people, but they're not, obviously, it's not Brad Pitt and Christian Bale and Angelina Jolie, because I really like when you kind of really get invested in the characters rather than there's Brad Pitt on screen. And the only moment for me that I had was when we saw from Harry Potter his uncle, but obviously it's because he's a famous actor within the actual play, and I thought that was funny.
I liked how they casted Rachel McAdams for this movie. We know Rachel from The Notebook and all the Vows, a lot of romantic comedies that she's done.
Wedding Crashers, Time Traveler's Life,
a lot of
Midnight in Paris.
romantic movies. But I liked how they casted an American. Well, technically she's Canadian, but
She's American in the movie.
She has the American demographic that will watch this movie, and then we have the British, the UK demographic that will also watch this movie. So I think that was smart on their part in casting.
Guys, I kind of had Rachel McAdams is great. I think she's awesome. I kind of had a problem with the casting of her, because to me, I don't know about you guys, but to me, she's definitely on par with Angelina Jolie in terms of level of fame. I think that in Time Traveler's Wife and Midnight in Paris, she played the romantic lead of somebody who was traveling in time. What was the difference between her performance here and in that? I would like to see growth. We know she can play very different roles, even if you look at Mean Girls, with Regina George. This woman has such power, and she's awesome. She really is. But to me, this wasn't a breakout role for her. This wasn't something incredibly different. And if they were going to cast him as the male lead, I thought it was a great opportunity to cast somebody up and coming, not somebody huge star.
And I would also agree with that, especially because for me, in the marketing of this movie, to me, it was really focused on her. I mean, even in the picture that's behind us, he's looking at her. The focus is on her. It's directed to her face. And she's a great actress, but I really just didn't get that much kind of from the character. She was sweet. She was beautiful. She was a little bit quirky. but
Let me ask you a
I
question.
only needed an image to tell me all of that.
Yeah, and the
I
thing
didn't-
is that she wasn't the protagonist in the movie. She was the supporting character. So I don't think it was really about her. Yes, she's a bigger name that we know from this movie, but she wasn't the anchor of the movie.
It was rumored that Zooey Deschanel was supposed to be cast.
Well, it's not a rumor.
Well,
she was supposed to be. Well, yeah.
He wouldn't confirm in interviews. Richard wouldn't.
he did.
He was like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to talk about that. Oh, well, sometimes things like this happen." But he wasn't like, "This is the person I wanted," and it fell through. And then he talked about his casting in Four Weddings and a Funeral and how that wasn't supposed to be Hugh Grant originally. Whatever. But anyway, the point is, do we think Zooey Deschanel would have had a different take, a better take, a worse take, or do we see anybody else that could have played the role?
You know, well, first I'll go the Rachel McAdams. You know, I want to address her. I mean, I think she's a good actress. And I think that she can play mean really good. She can play sympathetic really good. You know, she was in a really great Wes Craven movie called Red Eye, which is a suspense thriller, and she really had to pretty much hold that movie along with Cillian Murphy, but she did a really great job in that. And I think in this movie, look, if you find a type of role that works and it's a great script, this is the kind of movie, like, I think that she's great in. For a guy, you know, she's attractive, but not.
Girl
she's
next
not
door.
like she's attractive enough. She's really cute. She's adorable. She has a great infectious laugh and smile. From a guy's point of view, she's an attractive woman. And I think as far as her acting goes, I mean, I think she's fine. Now, The Notebook. I'm not watching The Notebook. You know, no offense. You know, the other movie that she did with yeah, well, of course you do, and that's great. And that, you
What
know,
do you
it's
mean? Of
probably
course
good.
we do.
Of course you do.
And I gotta admit, when we
that's great.
first
you
get
don't like The
introduced,
Notebook?
no, but I gotta admit, when we first get introduced to Mary in this movie, she reminded me like Allie when she was
much.
young and awkward and a
So
little
much.
insecure. So I had to separate myself. I was like, this is another movie, this is another role. Hopefully, she will kind of grow a little bit.
Well, what's interesting in terms of how that was handled, the first time we really meet Mary is in the dark, right?
Yes,
and
yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I like that technique in terms of, as you now pointed out, I like that they kind of start that separation there. And also, you kind of fall in love with them because they fall in love with each other based on what they're saying, not how they're looking at each other and whatever else.
Right. And and she's in the dark, but I'm just like,
And that's one of the best scenes in the movie, in my opinion.
what was the other one?
Blackout.
What was the one that she was in just recently? The Vow.
Vow, yes.
You know, which was, you know, again, I think going back to a romantic movie, to me, the ones that The Vow did a lot of money, and you know, a lot of if you look at the breakdown, I'm willing to bet that it was a lot of female. But to make a really good romantic comedy, you have to get the guys in there.
You
have
think
to.
that the demographic for About Time and the demographic for The Notebook are vastly different?
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Huh.
Absolutely. I think that About Time would probably, especially too, by the way that it was released and everything, I think About Time goes for a little bit more of a mature audience, a little bit of an older audience. It's not going for the teenage young adult girl for About Time. I mean, we listen to the themes that we talked about. I mean, we talk about themes of family togetherness, and yeah, I do. I think that they're vastly different movies.
I don't know. I completely disagree on that point. I mean, maybe it's just the people that I associate with, the people I've spoken to, but all of my guy friends have seen The Notebook, and they all love it. I don't know if you guys have found
But-
something completely different.
You also have to remember the Notebook was written by Nicholas Sparks, who already has that female demographic and audience and following. And so whoever has read his movies, his books have probably watched his movies. And then we have Richard Curtis, who wrote this movie known for Notting Hill and Four Weddings and a Funeral. So they had already two
Right.
different audiences.
And Richard Curtis and like Love Actually, I wouldn't compare Love Actually to a Matthew McConaughey, Kate Hudson romantic comedy. I mean, he writes more intelligent types of romantic movies. And again, though, but when you look at the history of really the highly successful romantic comedies like Oh, When Harry Met Sally.
Mm-hmm.
Like that didn't just speak to women; it spoke to guys too. It was like a great date movie. So, but as we've gone later on, like I said, before it was either Matthew McConaughey, Kate Hudson, or 27 Dresses, which, these movies. Katherine Heigl. I'm not going
James
to.
Marsden.
There's nothing in those movies that's going to get me. About Time, on the other hand, I'm going to go. I know Richard Curtis as a writer, as a decent director, and, I like his movies, but I don't think you're getting the growth. I mean, you're not going to get the young girls in the States to go, like, they're going to go see The Vow or The Notebook, but About Time, I'm not.
This is what I'm going to agree and disagree with you. One, I do think there is a distinct difference. You mentioned Love Actually and The Notebook. I would put those on, they're both romance movies, but they're very different. I would put About Time somewhere in the middle of those two, if it's like a spectrum. I will say that Rachel McAdams is a really big force, especially for the younger demographic still, because of The Notebook. So she still is going to pull in.
And Mean Girls.
She's going to pull in that audience no matter what. So there is going to be, I think there's going to be a teenage following or younger girl following for this movie.
Okay. Well,
and so they overlap.
We can talk about, I'll bring up the grosses because.
What was this movie rated?
I believe it's PG-13.
Was
Yeah.
I thought it was R.
Because I know that there was.
Pretty sure it was R.
There was no nudity.
No, but
no
there was.
nudity
There
at
was.
all.
I don't know about
I think
swearing.
There was swearing.
Yeah.
There was pictures of I could be wrong, but I think that you can see Kate Moss's boobs in the museum.
Well, that's art.
That's
true.
art. I had no problem with that.
No,
Of course, you know. Yeah, I
Right.
know that there was swearing because one of my favorite quotes from the mom, because I'm trying to sneak in these quotes anywhere that I can, was when
That's
she
great, though.
when she learns that her husband's gonna pass away, and she says, "Honestly, excuse my French. Honestly, I'm fucking furious. I'm so uninterested in a life without your father." And to me, to Sarah's point that she was one of her favorite characters, this moment made me fall in love with her even more. I thought that it was a just
Interesting-
really awesome
Interesting.
response.
You get one F-bomb in a PG-13.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh,
Yeah,
and that was it.
you have your limitations, but I do like
About Time is rated
It's
R.
rated
rated
R.
R. Yeah, I was pretty
Okay.
sure it was rated R.
All right.
But I
Well,
do.
I'm wrong.
Yeah, love it. I do love the.
She loves that you're wrong.
Poor Marisa trying to make a point.
I do love the overall cast in this movie. There
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
really great supporting cast, and I think all of from the family to the sister, the father, Bill Nighy, he's famous in UK, and the each individual character, they were all fun to watch.
Absolutely. But, but just I want to go back, like, again, for this going to the young girl audience, I think we just, with it being rated R, they're not
That's
trying
gonna be
to
hard,
get that
but I
audience.
think that
And
they
but
will
we'll
get
also
this
talk
audience
about
eventually.
like a little bit like, okay, the movie originally opened out here in the States November 1st, and it was on very few theaters, and in fact it made on its opening weekend it was on 175 theaters. So again, you're not really trying to go for the young adult girl, and it made $1 million.
Yep.
So to date, its total gross is 7.7. So I'm not arguing against Rachel McAdams, but I'm just saying she's not pulling in that draw that for that young adult girl that we know is out there. Now, the interesting thing to note, gross-wise, is that its total foreign and domestic box office is $47 million. So $40 million has come in from overseas.
Well, they
Yeah,
opened there
I-
September 4th, so they've had
Exactly.
longer.
But this
Do you
movie's not going to
think-
hit $40 million
No.
in the States.
Do you think
Definitely not.
this movie would have done better had it opened up in the UK and in here in America at the same time?
No, I don't really.
No, I think the grosses show that they opened it up the way that they should have. I mean, obviously Richard Curtis has some cachet, very popular writer and director over there. So opening it up overseas for them, they wanted to get their money in, and it's a hit overseas.
Yeah, and Sarah, what do you think?
I think that they would have done a lot better if they just put it down to PG-13. I think that this movie will do well when they edit certain things out and put it on TV, and when I think that's where it's going to really do well.
I'm very surprised that they didn't push for the PG-13 rating, because I think that this movie very easily could have been tweaked to be PG-13. In fact,
Easily.
we weren't even positive what the rating was walking out of the film, which is a sure tell sign that PG-13 was well within its grasp.
Yes.
And then that would have drawn from the audience that you're talking about it's lacking right now, which obviously would have had to make more money. So I think they probably knew that, knowing that it must not have been their primary focus to make money.
Do you think they rated it rated R because it was released in the UK first? This was mostly
I think it was rated. Well, I think it was rated R because of it was more than likely language. They probably had in addition a couple of more uses of the word fuck in there and subject matter perhaps, but I think it was primarily language. And listen, I think that had they even made it PG-13. It would have been futile because marketing this movie, you have the one thing in this movie that I hate to say it, but a lot of women do science fiction. You have this time travel thing, and it's not like what was the other Rachel McAdams movie? But that movie didn't do that. Time Traveler's Wife didn't even do that.
Which off a book, correct?
Yes, it was based off of a book.
Or Midnight in Paris, right?
But Midnight in Paris is an art house film. We're talking about trying to make this more of a commercial movie, and I don't think it would have sold. You couldn't sell it as such.
I do want to go back and say, because we are talking about Rachel McAdams a lot, more about her acting. I thought she did a great job. And nothing that I was saying she didn't do a great job.
You hate her.
She's very talented. No, I actually love her, which is why I would like to see her stretch herself a little more. And it was interesting because actually Richard Curtis said that he had asked her to be in things before and she had turned him down. So I was surprised that this was the project she accepted, considering she had already had those 2 roles previously. I feel like she is somebody who's trying to push her boundaries, and it's not like this was going to be a huge box office hit. So I don't know why she took the role. I'm actually wondering.
I have no idea. Maybe
script.
I was going to say she liked her quirky line.
She said she likes scripts that move her, and that this script moved her. So I guess that is reason enough.
She might have liked the moral, the message that was in this movie. You gotta live every day to its fullest. So I think that might have attracted her, despite her not really going out of her box in acting wise.
I'm not going to say this is the case either, but a lot of times, sometimes it's better to take the second or third role, even fourth, in a movie that, again, this might not be as commercially successful, but again, it's going to be a critical darling, right? Maybe not. I'm not saying like it's going to be an Oscar contention.
But I think the critics aren't so happy with it. They're giving it, I believe, on Rotten Tomatoes, like
a 60 or something.
Yeah, and it's like when you look at the movie thing, it's like fans are saying must go, and it's like critics are saying so.
Okay, well, so then, but again, with in terms of the script, she found something that she loved about it, and obviously, that's what audiences are reacting to, and so you'd rather be loved sometimes in that way than be the lead of a movie that, fans or critics aren't gonna like.
She's very much so America's sweetheart, and this role absolutely confirm, whatever you want to say that. So
do you think that goes to show the promotion of this movie? Because I only saw a couple trailers once or twice here and there, and even the movie poster, I know Stephen Lemieux, he mentioned that the poster that he had no idea what the movie was about.
I mean, I just think that it's a tough, from Universal's standpoint, when you have a movie like this, it's sort of kind of a difficult movie to market, and you sort of kind of have to cheat it, sort of kind of, because I didn't realize that the family was going to play in the movie as much, and not that I minded. I'm just saying from a marketing standpoint, you have to pick and choose. So they went about it in a way that the only way I think any studio could have gone about it, and this is a Richard Curtis from the guy that brought you Love Actually and Notting Hill and all these other great romantic movies. Here's another great romantic movie, and you can't shy away from the fact that it has that time travel element because it factors into the movie so much. So you try to show some cute scenes.
I thought that the trailers really fit the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
I told you my qualm is with the poster just because I think the focus is on her and I think it should be on him. Honestly, if I created this poster, I'd be like, put Tim in the foreground. She should be looking at him, and maybe his family are on the side. That's just my personal opinion. But if anyone has any final comments on like the actors, I think we should maybe bring up like favorite scenes before we get into the technical aspects.
I just want to talk
movie.
one final thing about just marketing, and then we can certainly talk about that. Only because Marisa mentioned that one of our other producers here, Stephen Lemieux, he looked at the poster and he was like, well, okay, what's the movie even called? Right? Is it Notting Hill? Is it Love Actually? And what's interesting to me, just from a movie going experience, you don't really need to know the title, right? For example, when you go see Man of Steel, you just go, hey, one ticket to the Superman movie. For this one, it's like, oh, can I get it to the Notting Hill movie? People, you know what I mean? As long as you get into that theater to see that movie, call it whatever you want. Hey, one ticket for the Rachel McAdams movie. It doesn't matter. And that's what I loved about the marketing. It just got, quote unquote, asses in seats.
Well,
Sort of.
it's sort of.
For the people
but
that
here's the other
should have
thing.
gone.
Well, but again, when you look at where they marketed it to, like every time I saw a movie at the Landmark, this trailer was on like every movie. It wasn't on every trailer that I went to an AMC theater. So the other thing you have to note is, there's really, outside of Rachel McAdams for United for a U.S. audience, there's nobody that's familiar in this movie. Seriously, like Bill Nighy, I love the guy,
okay,
but
yes, let's
he's
get
not
into the
but he's
cast
not
here.
an American. He's not an American draw. He's a recognizable face. There's no cachet out here for like you don't. We can't even pronounce. No disrespect, but we can't even pronounce his name. So.
He's to me though, he's the least recognizable. Like I did recognize like Bill.
You recognize
and,
the sister. I didn't recognize
Not
the
the sister,
sister.
not the
I didn't
sister.
recognize. Yeah,
or the friend,
the-
or
the
what was his name,
Or
Joanna,
Charlotte,
or the playwright.
I thought they had three big players. So that
but when
was
you say define big,
Rachel McAdams would you define her as a big player?
I wouldn't define her as a box office smash. Like I wouldn't say putting Rachel McAdams in a movie guarantees you box office. I would say depending on the movie, she can guarantee, like she can bring in something. But like when you talk about The Vow, it wasn't Rachel McAdams that was bringing in people. It was Channing Tatum. He was bringing in the women.
I
No.
totally disagree. And then I would say like you even put her in movies like Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes, she's a very like she's like a love interest. She's up against very big people, and her name is up there.
Her character dies within the first 10 minutes of Game of Shadows. So I'm just saying that Rachel McAdams, she's a great actress. I'm just not saying that she's the box office draw. Like if you didn't have Channing Tatum in The Vow, I'm not sure The Vow would have been as big of a movie as it was.
That's true. That's true too, because
So-
he brings in quite a
But
lot.
if
of
you didn't
people.
have her, I don't think it would have been as big of a movie as it was.
I think she could have been
either.
replaced by anybody.
I liked all of the.
Anybody?
Almost anybody. I think that character. I think and again, it's no disrespect to her. I think she's a very good actress. But I'm just saying, had they used somebody else, they probably would have gotten the same result.
Rachel McAdams was there for a reason. This whole movie, Richard always wanted a movie about about family. Rachel's character was that love interest for Tim, so he can start his own family.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. No.
Guys, let's talk about like
Yes,
scenes or
let's talk
something.
about-
Let's leave this to rest. I mean, people will decide if they like her or not.
Overall, what were like some key scenes that really stood out for you?
Oh, I
Roxy,
thought
go ahead.
that I really liked the little cute, funny scenes between Mary and Tim, such as when they were having that talk about they were at this diner and they're having this talk and she's talking about how she reads books and he's like, well, what do you do then when you want to read a book for fun? Because I think about this all the time with prostitutes, and these prostitutes, what do they do when they stop being prostitutes and they're trying to have sex for fun? And he says, I always think about that. And she says, really? You always think about that's something that you're always worried about? And I thought that was so cute and endearing, and it made me start to fall in love with the fact that they were falling in love. I thought that was a really nice moment.
That was a nice moment.
And there were many more like that. I mean, talking about when they were the little oral sex thing, when the parents were
Yours
about to
came
come.
from the
Right.
quippy dialogue.
Right. It was just it was cute. It was fun. It was light, and I could see that they were so into each other.
Yeah. No. And those parts of the movie, again, what I loved about like that romance, that was about the romance, and they weren't opposites who attract. When you think about it, they were pretty much on the same playing field. Each is adorable in their own way, awkward in their own way, and so when they get together, you really cheer for them. You root for them because of those scenes. And I love the romance. I mean, for me, I think my all-time favorite in About Time is probably the scenes that Tim had with his dad, especially when his dad, took him back. He goes, "I have one more thing, and I just want to go back." That to me was very emotional. And my parents are getting older too, and it just made me think about my life and growing up, and is there anything that I would like to do again, or what relationships have been forged? And that was such a nice ending because they're at the ocean. It's like sunset. They're skipping stones into, and to me that was
and there's a lot of those moments, and the fact that you could love so many of them, that's really good. Like to have these really deep, heartfelt father-son moments, not have it once in a film, but have them happen 5 times, and still make you care about them. That's impressive.
To that point, I think it was a technique that was done brilliantly through cinematography, sound effect, acting, everything. Right? How many times by the end it was just, "Hey, I need a moment." It was always the turn, and I need a moment, and then if it was to happen, there was always that sound effect. We kind of go back to a medium shot of something that we've already seen with the, and we're back in time or whatever it is, and we're affected. And I like, in terms of the quirkiness, for me, the scene that worked really well was when she's finally like, "Okay, we're going to address this issue head on. What happened here? Give me a no, you're not getting out of this one."
Yeah. I liked it, Phil, you mentioned the sound effect that at the beginning when he first finds out about this magic power that I call it magic, but this ability that it has this big loud, I don't know exactly how to describe it, a whooshing effect that he's warped. And he's going back in time. But throughout the movie, every time he does it, it got to the point where all you do is just hear the sound, and you already know that he's already traveled back. Yeah. So I liked how they used such a simple sound over and over again, but we got the message of what it does.
Yeah, besides the fact that I loved the moments with the two of them, and I loved their relationship, even when they were picking about what to do with the wedding, and she's doing the little strip thing for him, I thought that was adorable. But other than that, it would be absolutely cheating this movie to not acknowledge the role of the sister, Kit Kat, who we have not talked about completely yet, and probably, definitely top couple favorites, maybe my top moment of the movie is when we see her say, "Maybe I'm the faller." And she's talking about how, she says, in every family there's that one person who keeps falling and falling, and I think that probably at some point in our lives, at least I know I have, definitely felt like this, and everybody around you just seems to be flying and you just seem to be stumbling, and you're just the one who's stumbling, and you're like, well, maybe that's just my role, but maybe that's who I am. And as we see, that's not her role. That's not who she is. That's just where she is in life at that moment. And I loved seeing, I think of everybody, I think she probably did have the biggest character arcs, where she started and where she ended up and how she got there. And I especially love that going back in time isn't what fixed it for her, that she had to fix it herself, and that they sat there by the hospital bed with her, and that sometimes we make mistakes. It happens, in life. You pick the wrong guy, you make the wrong decision, and you go down a path that not that you weren't meant to go down, but that it's just not the healthy, not the right path.
Yeah, and I love that message that as much as you want to help everyone else and you have the ability to help them, that they have to help themselves first.
Right. Yeah. And had she not been in that car accident, you never know if later down in life she would have been drinking and driving again, because it never had affected her the way that it affected her that time, If you don't make mistakes, you don't grow and you don't learn, and you have to make your own mistakes. That's the point of life.
Yeah, and she is definitely, that character, Kit Kat, is definitely a focal point, where a lot of the plot goes around that character, because even at one point when he goes, I believe when he goes to save her and he comes back and his kid's different, right? Am I getting the chronology right?
It's a different child.
He's got to go back. But again, these are all the things that thematically, I think that this movie hit on. Kit Kat is a great character because as recluse as she is, the family doesn't shun her. The family doesn't, especially Tim. Kit Kat has a very special place in his heart. as a sister, and he cares for her deeply. But I think it goes back to what we said earlier about themes that, yes, this family, this is a family that truly does love, care, and support one another. And I think that's rare in today's movies. I think it's rare in today's television to have this kind of a family where they really want to go out and help one another. And, the Kit Kat, you're right. She's a great, I'm not familiar with the actress, but she's a great character. She's written perfectly. And you don't mind her foibles, but you know that she's getting in the way of herself. I
love the whole family dynamic because Richard, the director, he mentioned that, having this ability, if people had this ability, they would always say, oh, I would like to redo this situation so I'd have a different outcome. But he always wanted to touch upon the fact, if you had this ability, you go back to just a simple moment in life that you can just enjoy over again. And the recurring thing in this movie was going back and spending time with your family.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say my favorite scene.
Yeah.
Can I say that?
No, I'm welcoming it.
No, my favorite scene, it's actually, was their wedding.
I love that.
It was hilarious.
Which wedding?
Which wedding? Just the fact that they kept their wedding exactly the way it was, even though it was a complete disaster. That made me very happy.
Well, we opened.
I
It was
like
also
that.
hilarious. I just really enjoyed everyone getting
That's great.
just sopping wet.
Right.
And Marquis.
Yeah.
We opened the movie with him telling us that rain or shine, we go through with these events. We watch movies outside. We pull up the umbrella. We do all of this, and then to see the wedding and have it be pouring and have them go through rain or shine,
And
it was a
them love
testament.
it.
Yeah.
And them be laughing while everyone else is miserable at their
And
wedding.
then
I
there was
love
a
it.
moment during that scene where, like, if we could do it all over again, she said she wouldn't change it for the world. And he was okay with that. I was like, all right.
And they went so big.
There was no
with
need
this.
to change it.
Right. There was no need to change at all. They went so big. It wasn't drizzling on their raining day. It was pouring.
It was a
torrential.
The
deluge.
tent came down. They were all soaking wet. Their makeup was running. Their dresses were ripped. Everybody was flying up in the
But
wind.
it's okay. When they
Yeah.
go inside, they look much better.
Funny thing about that scene, Rachel and Dom, they mentioned about the whole tent breaking apart, and that actually did happen and fell on the actors, but those two managed to escape because the makeup crew didn't want to redo their hair again. Yeah, so they had to, like, get them out.
I love that. What did you guys think about the length of this movie? I'm just curious because
I felt it went a little too long. They could have cut some scenes here and there. I feel the dating scene when they first meet in the darkness. We see the whole time lapse from, like, I believe it was 2 to 3 hours. I think those, yes, they were fun and quirky, and we got the feel of what the personalities were like before we even saw them together. But I felt like some of the discussion went a little too long.
Here's my
I was
problem.
gonna
My
ask
problem with it.
Phil about this. No, I was gonna really because I'm very curious to what you think because I know my thoughts. But go ahead.
Well, because here's the
Congrats, I'm
problem,
glad you
right?
know your thoughts.
And initially, you kind of know what the goal is. The goal is get a girl, right? First off, it's Charlotte, then it's Mary, and then all of a sudden these things come up of like, okay, he's got to help his friend, and oh no, I lost Mary's number. So you have an immediate goal you are on a journey with. Then eventually, life, for all intents and purposes, seems good. Right, and there was the moment when Jimmy knocked on the door. I was like, okay, something bad has to happen. Okay, knock on the door. All right, we're just at the point where where I know audiences are like, okay, we need something to happen. And I was like, okay, finally, we're there. However, in those sections, we lost the immediate goal. We didn't know where we were going, and that's what started lagging. And I think had they just compressed a little bit, gotten to the father. Let's say 5 or 10 minutes. If John Comfort was here, he'd say 10 minutes. So I'm going to go 10 minutes because he's a script doctor. We would have been okay.
Yeah,
But it's more of a European movie, so it's like, okay, here's life as lived rather than the American, like, objective.
Yeah, I feel like the montages were a little long.
the train one.
Yes, the train when they're at the train, and that lasted a few minutes. We hear a whole song for that amount, and then
Yeah, I like the song.
And then when he's
Ben Folds,
at that museum display for Kate Moss, we see all these people passing over and over again.
Right.
That lasted a little too long.
To me, the I thought there was a definitive where it ended, and it seemed to go on a little bit more longer than that. Now, I don't exactly know where to trim, because it's funny when I left the movie, we people I went with, we talked about it, like where would you have trimmed? I thought the pacing of the movie was very good. I thought it was put together. I thought it was edited really well. And I would, however, I do agree that it was perhaps a little long. I just wouldn't know exactly where to put that end. Like where to cut out,
I'm gonna give advice to any wannabe filmmakers, right? And actually, Sarah and Roxy are learning this because we've been working together more and more. And I learned this from John, right? Just cut, because cut. You don't know. You know what I mean? Any movie that I've ever seen in the edit bay, the first rough cut, honest to God, is gonna be, if you get a 3-hour movie, you're in good shape. Ironically, most of them turn out to be 4. If you're Peter Jackson, more like 20 hours.
Well, I'm just
curious.
However,
that's why they make director's cuts now, so that everyone can be happy.
I don't think
at some point.
Have you ever walked out of a movie and been like, that was too short? Like, I don't think I've ever done that. So I would agree with your.
That's
just
what I'm
cut.
saying. Because here's the thing. You have the longer version when you start. Just cut. Then when something feels off, you're like, okay, that was a little bit too fast. Let's put certain things back in. And it's you can do those things, but you have to have that freedom and the courage to do so.
I don't think that you'll ever walk out of a movie being like, that's too short. What I think you can walk out of, that's the translation, is sometimes when you feel like empty.
Yeah.
Or you feel like you have unanswered questions or something like that. Maybe they cut out character work or setups or something. And that's where you get that discrepancy. Maybe they cut too much there.
Well, this movie didn't do that.
See, the thing for me, I felt like the last 10 minutes of the movie wasn't really needed. I mean, we got the message in the last 10 minutes. I felt like the climax was the part when the father died.
Yeah.
Then they added the whole message of what the father last said to Tim, that you had to relive each day twice and enjoy it. And that ending part went a little too long. It was like, we got the message now.
In terms of Richard, this isn't his first time dealing with this problem. When he did Love Actually, it was about 3.5 hours long, and he was like, I can't cut anything else. It ended up being 2 hours, so you can go ahead and cut something.
He just loves what he shoots. I don't know how to
But again, Love Actually had a
Detachment.
huge ensemble cast. There was a lot to cut from that. So, but yes, the ending was, we got the message. It was a little long.
Yeah, I mean, it almost felt like it ended and then it continued on for a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
But again, for me, that's ultimately, I really like the movie. I think it's a hard thing to do. We talk about the family, right? And there's so much a part of this movie that you actually sort of really get to know, like, about the mom and about Kit Kat and about Dad.
Even Uncle D, the forgetful.
Oh my God,
I loved
was
him.
fantastic. But the thing is, when you look at most movies, when they're having such a cast of characters, okay, a lot of times those characters are in the background. You don't get to know them all that well. So again, I go back. What I said earlier is that the balancing act that Richard Curtis's script and directing and pacing was great. I mean, he was able to put this ensemble together. You had at its core a romance movie and about love, and it is about time. It's about time with one's mate. It's about time with one's family. And I think he does a fantastic balancing act in this movie.
Okay.
Here, for Richard, I would say this. You had the perfect device with the voiceover, right? And I will be the first to say, most of the time I really hate voiceover. However, he did it in such a genuine way that I didn't mind it. And so that could have been a technique used to cut out some time and just throw in voiceover. Now, had he done that, we might have been complaining like, oh, the voiceover was used to just cut out time. Typically you get that a lot. So I could see that. Also, to just really fast about Uncle B, I thought he was so dim-witted because he'd done so much time traveling that he didn't know what was real and what wasn't.
I would agree with you.
That's
and he was
assessment.
so much fun.
So fun.
Turn. So before, I feel like we have a lot to do. We only have a little bit of time left, right?
Yep.
And I wanted to, at the very end of this, guys, I want to ask the question. I'm going to prepare you right now. Of what would your main thing be if you had the ability to travel in time? For his father, it was books. For him, it was a girlfriend or love. If you can think of one thing, I think it'd be good. Also, I think, does anyone have any crazy stories about casting, filming? When we've been through a couple. but I guess that'd be in production, post-production.
Well, not about casting, but about posting about this being potentially the director's last film.
Yes, he said that he's not going to do directing anymore, but he's still going to write and help in that aspect, which is good.
Well, he says he doesn't know. He says he's taking inspiration from this movie itself, that you're supposed to live every single day. And he says to film a movie from beginning to end, if you're the writer, the director, it takes him about 3 years of his life. And he's not ready right now to commit 3 entire years because he does want to live more day by day. He is tied up in a couple other projects right now, so we will definitely see some things come out.
But there's one already. At the end of the film, the guy's reading a book called Trash,
Which is
and
hilarious.
that's his next movie that he's like written, and it's a Roald Dahl adaptation with Dustin Hoffman and Judi Dench. And again, directing can take up, a lot of your life. And if he continues to write, I'm fine with that too. He wants to see if he's learned his lesson and if he could live up to the test of just enjoying life. And
we got to quickly talk about just the quick music, the soundtrack of this movie. We hear the score near the ending of it. Yes, there's that. And I found out that this particular score was actually supposed to be used for another movie, but wasn't. It was used for this.
Do you know what other movie it was supposed to be used for?
I
can't remember
I'm
right now.
completely blanking on it.
I thought the music in this was great.
Folk song.
It was fun. It was playful, and
It's Ben Folds, by the way.
yeah,
Right.
Ben Folds.
And Ben Folds also did The Luckiest, which is how we ended it. And if you saw any of the interviews, Ben Folds was very involved in the process and was in a lot of the interviews. And actually, Richard Curtis said that he drew inspiration for this movie from the song The Luckiest. So that was very interesting to me.
Artists sharing opinions always creates wonderful work. I don't know.
So and I believe in the soundtrack, like the different soundtrack titles, that they have themes about time and like how long do I love you, even the lyrics
It's like
in
the
movie.
period playlist from that movie, like No Strings Attached or something. And no one knows what I'm
The
talking
songs
about.
at the party were also very different and upbeat, and they kept changing them, and it was quick, and it helped the pacing of the movie. So
I would
really
disagree
enjoyed
because, notice how they were mostly melancholy, right? Had they upped
I
it a little
don't
bit
know.
towards... No. Really think about
At
it.
the
No,
party?
it's like hippie folk. That's what I would say.
Okay,
it is.
but had they picked up the tempo a little bit,
As long
you
as
would
I
have
love
felt
you.
a different pacing throughout. But it was kind of the same overall beats
Are you talking
Yeah,
about throughout the film or
Throughout.
during New Year's Eve party?
throughout.
Oh, I
mean,
was just talking about the party songs.
Oh, okay.
The New Year's Eve party. I thought that they were very quick and they changed every time they went, but whatever it was, I thought that was good. Throughout, I do agree. It did, we've said it was 123 minutes. It felt a little long. And I do think had they picked up the music a little bit, it would have been...
It was the music for a
pacing-
picnic.
But that being
Yep.
said, I definitely will download the soundtrack, and this will
For
be
a
something that I
picnic.
listen
It's
to.
fun.
Maybe for a picnic.
So quickly, let's talk about, Sarah, your question. What scene or what particular moment in our life that we would time travel back to?
Oh, does it have to be that
Oh,
specific?
I didn't pick a moment. I'm
Or
more
or
I
whatever.
picked a strategy.
Okay.
A strategy, and this is I would make really good friends with one airport, and I would just listen, just listen.
What do you mean friends with an airport?
Okay.
How do you make friends at the airport?
Building?
Like LAX. Hi, LAX.
I'd be like LAX. No, because then I could always like get on a plane because you have to have this, you have to be somewhere that you can always been. So it's
Who are you friends with, though? I don't understand.
the building. I'm treating
Okay.
LAX as a person. It's whatever. Anyway, but because you can only go somewhere you've been, and I really like to travel, and like it'd be fun for adventures. So you need somewhere that's kind of a hub that you can go back to, and get a new direction, right? So with an airport, I could go to Africa for like 2 months and live a life there, and then go back to the airport and go to somewhere else, and go back to the airport and go to somewhere else.
Okay.
Constantly, like
Because
that's
the
one of
airport's your
things-
best friend, and at night you cuddle with the airport.
Yeah.
What
Is that what you're
airline?
saying?
It's a place
What
you can go
airline
to.
would you
guys-
would you make?
Airlines. Wow. That okay.
I mean, is that a
Dimitri,
subcategory?
Dimitri,
This is just one of my
what-
strategies. I would
That's fun.
for travel.
That's fun.
You know, it's a really good question, and I don't want to be like maudlin or anything. My life has been filled. You know that there's been good and bad throughout it all. but I can't think right now of anything that I could change. There you go. Thanks.
Phil, what would
That was
you
awesome.
Look at
go
you
back
when
to?
you're happy.
Where would I go back to?
Go back, or what would you do with it?
I mean, honest answer. There's a lot of things, and you can talk about regret. You talk about happy moments and things like that. And I don't know if I'm ready to reveal that side of myself.
Okay. Roxy.
I don't know. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I think I'm a pretty cool person in general, and I wouldn't be the person I am today. So I think I would probably go more the route he did and try not to go back as much. That being said, I'm a huge film and television guru, so in the way that they used it for reading, I would definitely use it for film and TV.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Because I
Not
can't
waste any
find
time
enough
to
time to do that. For me personally, I would probably not really change my behavior, but go back to a certain moment in high school when I could have been a little bit more social, maybe made more friends a little bit back at that time. But you got to learn from your past to that's who you are. It makes you who you are today. So I think maybe had I changed some things in my past, I would have had different relationships with different people, and I would have been somewhere else in life. Or not saying that I don't want to be here, but I'm just saying things could have been so much more different.
Captain Kirk once said, "I need my pain." So, yeah.
And so this was a really fun movie. Roxy, you had a quick question? Real quick?
Oh, guys, it's not quick. It was just Phil.
Got like 1 minute.
I know. Phil and I were battling before about whether we thought that this couple earned the love that they were actually in, whether we felt like that they were actually in love or they just loved the concept of love. I felt like they were actually in love. I was curious whether you guys did.
Oh, the movie wouldn't have worked for me had I not thought they were actually in love.
Okay.
I thought they're cute.
Here's what I will say.
Words of wisdom from Sara
Words
Stretton.
of wisdom for every guy out there. Don't just regurgitate what the girl tells you. Use it to your advantage, right? Mm-hmm. For example, had he really known her, and again, I love the movie, and I throw nothing away against it, but just in his proposal, he had people there. Had he really known her, he wouldn't have had people there. So that's all I'm saying. Use the information and knowledge gained from time travel to your advantage by doing something.
Save the clock
That's
tower.
True. And with that, we should just finish at that. And I would try time travel back to this beginning of this podcast when I said Dying Young is actually still Magnolias. There you go.
There you go.
I was kicking myself for that.
You didn't have to time travel. You just got
Marisa, take a moment.
There you go. And yep, there's my moment. All right, so where can we all find you? Demetri, go ahead.
Anatomy of a Movie. You can find me at anatomyofamovie.com. Please, after watching, please comment. Please let us know what you think. It is very important. Love, hate, I don't care. That just means that you're watching.
Yes, Sarah.
You can find me here or also at AfterBuzz TV Network. I do a show on Boardwalk Empire on Sundays currently. That's about it right now.
All right, Roxy.
You can find me here or on AfterBuzz TV or, of course, social media at Roxy Striar.
Phil, where can we find you?
Follow us, Movie Anatomy, and Facebook.com/Anatomy of a Movie, anatomyofmovie.com.
And yes, and you can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Serafini TV, even though we do talk about movies, and also at AfterBuzz TV, our sister network. And I did love this movie. I will probably buy it when it comes out on DVD. So thank you for listening to us and watching us.
We had a great time.
Yes, this was a fun conversation, and we will be with you next time for our next movie.
Woohoo.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.